Hey everyone, and a special welcome to all you IGNOU aspirants out there. Look, if you're prepping for your exams, you know J.S. Mill is a big one. His theory of economic development? Yeah, it's got to be on your radar. So, in this quick explainer, we're going to break it all down. We'll make it super simple, super clear, and most importantly, really easy to remember when you're sitting in that exam hall.
Yeah, this whole thing is built just for you. We're going to cut through the noise and focus only on the core concepts you absolutely have to know to ace this section. The goal? To get you totally exam ready in like the next 5 minutes. Sound good? Okay, let's get into it.
All right, here's the plan. First, we'll tackle Mill's growth process. Then, we'll look at population and the workforce. After that, it's investment in tech, and then the business cycle. We'll wrap it all up with his big ideas on the limits to growth and, of course, a killer summary slide with all the key takeaways for your exam.
Okay, first up, Mill's growth process. So let's start at the very beginning, right? What are the fundamental building blocks of his whole economic engine? Well, it all kicks off with something he called the agents of production.
So, Mill points to 3 key things that make any production happen. You've got land, and that means all natural resources, not just a farm plot. Then there's labor, which is pretty straightforward, right? It's the human effort. And finally, you have capital. Think of this as the tools, the machines, the factories, all the stuff that helps labor get the job done.
And boom, here's your first exam hack to nail this down. Just remember the letters LLC. Land, labor, capital. Seriously, just writing that down will give your answer a great structure. LLC. Got it? Okay, now this next part is a big deal. We're talking about a concept Mill himself called the most important proposition in political economy, and that is diminishing returns. The idea is simple. If you keep adding more labor to a fixed piece of land, eventually each new worker adds less and less to the total output. He saw this as a huge natural brake on growth. But, and this is key, he also knew that technology and new ideas could fight back against it. All right, next section, population and the workforce. So now that we have the basic ingredients, let's bring in the people. And Mill's views on population were, well, they were pretty different and way more thoughtful than what came before him. So you've probably heard of Malthus, right? The guy who was super pessimistic, thinking population growth would always lead to starvation. Mill started there, but he totally flipped the script. He wasn't a doomer. He argued that, hey, we can actually control population growth. How? Through things like public policy, education, and, get this, for his time this was radical, women's rights. He believed that empowering people, especially women, would naturally lead to better choices and higher living standards. And this modern, more optimistic take is what gets him the label neo-Malthusian. Write that term down, it's a key phrase for your exam. It just means he shared the concern of Malthus, but he believed in solutions like birth control and education to actually improve everyone's quality of life. Big difference. Okay, let's move on to the fuel for this engine. We've got our land, we've got our labor, but what really gets things moving? For Mill, it's all about investment, technology, and the profits that make it all happen. For Mill, profit wasn't just some random number. He was really specific. He broke it down into 3 distinct pieces. First, you've got interest. That's just the basic return you get for putting your capital on the line. Then there's insurance, which is basically a payment to cover the risk that the whole thing could fail. And finally, the wages of superintendents, which is a fancy way of saying the salary for the person who's actually running the show. And of course, we've got a mnemonic for this. To remember these 3 parts of profit, just think IIW, or even better, think I win. I win on my exam. That's for interest, insurance, and wages. Easy. All right, let's switch gears a bit. Mill wasn't just thinking about the long game. He had some really cool ideas about something we all experience, the business cycle. Those crazy booms and busts. And his explanation? It wasn't about spreadsheets or data. For him, it was all in our heads. He called it irrational expectations. Here's how it works. The economy starts booming, prices go up, and everyone gets caught up in this illusion of riches. They feel wealthy, so producers get overexcited and make way too much stuff. They overproduce. But eventually, reality bites back, the illusion is shattered, and boom, the market crashes. It's a cycle driven entirely by human psychology. Okay, so now for the big finale. Let's take all these pieces, diminishing returns, population, capital, and put them together. Let's see Mill's grand vision for where society is headed in the long run. What's the end game here? Now, you're going to see this table, and I know what you're thinking. Do I have to memorize all of this? No, don't panic. Don't try to memorize every single box. The real key for your exam is to understand the story it tells. It's about the interplay, right? What happens to wages, profits, and rents when you change the levels of population, capital, and technology? That's the important part.
So, after looking at all these different scenarios, what's the big takeaway? Well, this quote from Mill nails it. He basically says that because land is the one thing we can't make more of, as society gets richer and more crowded, it's the landlords who end up winning in the end. Rents just keep going up.
But hang on. This is where Mill gets really interesting and completely breaks away from everyone else. See, other economists looked at the end of growth, what they called the stationary state, and they saw disaster, a bleak, grim future. But Mill? He saw it as a victory. He thought it was a good thing. For him, it meant we could finally stop the frantic chase for more money and start focusing on what actually makes life worth living. Things like social progress, art, philosophy, a truly better society. So for him, it wasn't an end. It was a beautiful new beginning.
Okay, we have covered a ton, so let's boil it all down to one final slide. This is your ultimate revision checklist. Everything you need to remember for the exam is right here.
Let's run through it. The three agents of production: land, labor, capital. That's your LLC. The big limit on growth: diminishing returns. His take on population: neo-Malthusian. The three parts of profit: interest, insurance, wages. Remember, I win. What causes business cycles? Irrational expectations. And what's the ultimate goal for society? The stationary state, which Mill saw as a totally virtuous endgame. Seriously, take a picture of this slide. This is your golden ticket for any question on J.S. Mill. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about, doesn't it? This idea from the 19th century that maybe, just maybe, the goal isn't endless economic growth, but human progress and well-being. It feels incredibly modern, almost prophetic. So was he just an economist, or did he see something about our future? Something to chew on. Hey, thanks so much for joining me. Go out there and crush those exams. You've totally got this. All the best.